Okay, let's make some music. So, off camera, I made this piano melody, and this is what it's really repetitive. Here are the notes, by the way, if you're curious. These are the notes. So, it's pretty repetitive and relatively simple. So I might add some more to it. I did add, some flavor notes here and there for some variation, but it's mostly a repetitive pattern. So I'm going to be making a boom bap beat today. I don't know if I already mentioned that. And I'm going to be using this piano as like my bass. So let's tweak the piano a bit because I think it's a bit fast for what I want. It may work. It may be too fast. I'm not sure. Let me try halftime. I don't know what kind of aesthetic I want to go for because boom bap is a pretty general and broad category of music, and as such, there are all kinds of different, types of boom bap that you can make. I don't know what kind of aesthetic I want to go for yet. I may go for like a darker, grittier sound. I may go for, although it kind of messes with the sound a bit. I might just keep this. Yeah, all I did was reverse it. And that actually sounds cool. EQ it. Make sure I don't have too much low end. I'm going to add a bell. Let's go with the dream bell. And then I think we can repeat it again. And then I think I'm going to do the same thing I did for the piano. And even though we can't hear most of it now because of the halftime, and just kind of subtly make things different as I go. So maybe in this half, I made it different by adding these notes here. Maybe I can also add a little something for some extra flavor. Like, what if we did this? Bit fast. And then I want this to be slightly different than this, like just by like a tiny amount, maybe just one note. So maybe, or we can just add a little something extra to it to make it a little bit more flavorful. So maybe something like this. Then we can make this one slightly different than this somehow. It already kind of is because this isn't here, but maybe we can do something similar over here. Okay, so pretty repetitive, and there are differences, but they're just very small differences. Okay, I think I'm going to keep the dream bell the way it is, and then I might put reverb on this other thing. The piano that I reversed. As weird as that sounds, like putting reverb on something that's reversed, but let's see what it sounds like. That way the two instruments are in different spaces. So I put some reverb on this reverse piano to kind of push it in the back a little bit, because it already doesn't have a ton of high end on it if I look at the EQ for it. we can probably imagine there's not too much going on up here. So yeah, there's a little bit of noise here from what I added on the Frank Paul Retro, but there's not too much happening up here. And what that does, oftentimes if something is missing high-end information, that tends to push it back in the stereo field a little bit, or at least it seems that way. It seems to push things further back in space. And adding reverb does a similar thing. So because I knew that this one already kind of sounded like it was a little bit further back, I just kind of wanted to make that even more so and accentuate it by adding a little bit of reverb to it. And that's also part of the reason why I took off the reverb from the Dreambell. So I came over here to reverb and hit none. And that was because I knew that I was going to put reverb on this other thing and I wanted them to be in like different spaces. Okay, so let's randomize these. And so I hit Control A to get everything, all the notes. And then Alt R is how I did that randomization. And then to save time and make this sound kind of real, normally what I would do is I would go in and like randomly move some of these notes back and forward, and I would do this for like all the notes. That takes a long time. So something I discovered relatively recently is if you hit Control A and then Alt Q, that brings up the quantizer. So normally you would use this to put everything directly on the grid. So Alt Q, if I moved this and I hit Control A and then Alt Q, the more aggressive I do this, the more on the grid it's going to be. And in this case, the grid is right here. And you can change this grid to a whole bunch of different things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this quantizer to randomize the notes. So I'm going to put this back right on. So I'm going to Control A, Alt Q, and then to randomize the notes, what we're going to do is we're going to select something that's different than the normal like grid, which is what it quantizes based on. And I kind of pick these sort of at random, just kind of, and then look and see what it does. And then if I don't like it, I'll come back and change it. But I'll just kind of pick one. So dotted eighth note I find often gives me pretty good results. So you pick one of these, and then you play with this knob until you get the amount of randomization that you kind of like. So if you have this all the way up like this, it puts everything perfectly on the grid that you set. So the grid that we set in this case is dotted eighth notes. So now everything is directly on a dotted eighth note perfectly. Whereas if I bring it all the way down, it's like the mix is all the way down and the notes are where they were to begin with. So if you put this somewhere in between and hit accept, it's almost like we randomized the note timings a little bit. So if I zoom in on these, so these first two notes haven't moved. This one hasn't moved. This one, we'll notice, has been moved up a little bit. And that's not a chord, but yeah. So this one hasn't moved. This one has been moved back a little bit. So we have effectively randomized the notes a little bit. And you can accentuate this a little bit by doing kind of what I said earlier and just kind of randomly selecting some of these notes. Doesn't really matter, okay? And then just sort of move some of them back a little bit and then deselect some of them. And this will make that randomization that we just did be a bit more like aggressive, if you will. So, and you can do the same thing by moving some of the notes forward. So, but yeah, the goal is just to kind of put notes in places so that they're a little bit off. Because when humans play things, we tend to play things imperfectly. And so when you hear a piece of music and it sounds like everything is hitting perfectly on the grid, oftentimes, or not oftentimes, sometimes that can like make it sound strange to us because it, let's say you're listening to something that's supposed to be a guitar, but then it sounds perfectly on the grid, like a robot played it. It doesn't sound as real and it doesn't sound as good sometimes to us. So this can kind of help with that. I didn't realize all of these notes were panned to the left. I think that's the left. Yeah, now they're panned to the right. Okay. Okay. So for now, I think that's good enough for the melody. I think I'm gonna start adding drums. Like I said before, I think I want to make some boom bap. And I have a whole bunch of like loops that I've made, and some of them are boom bap, like drum loops that I could use. But I think what I want to do, so yeah, in here. So I've got some different. I think that one's pretty cool. I've used that one a couple times. But I think what I want to do is make make the loop from scratch for this one. So let's find a kick. Okay, and I don't know if I think I want a snare. I don't think I want a clap for this. I'm just gonna grab a bunch of different sounds and then we'll start putting them together here in a minute. Okay, so I've got plenty of sounds now. It's kind of hard to see them all, but all right. So I've got a couple of different kicks. That one, and I think if I play them at the same time, they'll sound pretty cool. Alright, let's repeat this. And then I think what I'll do with the kicks is I'll change it every so often. So every 4 bars I might add a little something different. So okay, let's copy it over. I think I want to make the drums a little bit different, so I'm gonna go boom, 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 boom. Yeah, what if I go boom, 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 boom? And then I want to, like I said before, I want to change the drums and have them, like at least the kicks, be a little bit different from time to time. So maybe in the second half we can be a bit more aggressive. So okay, so I just took away some of those extra notes that I added in this second half just to make it a little bit less complex. I just wanted one section to be a bit more complex than the others. So let's copy this over to the other kick, because that was just one of them. Oh yeah, I forgot that I had 2 different kicks because I wanted different textures. I'm just now remembering that. It's so like I just immediately layered them and forgot the whole purpose of me getting different textured kicks was so that I could have different textures. So let me take away some of these. Okay, I think I want to add a third kick, as funny as that sounds. But I want one that's like very deep and very like, I don't know what the word is for it, but I want something that's like consistent for the kicks. Even though the textures are changing, I kind of want something to be the same about them. I think I like the texture of this one for like a really slow. And maybe we can go half that speed and just do this. And then I'll do something similar with all the hats, and we can do this. Do a slightly faster one with this one. So maybe we can do 8 and then do something similar and take every other one and lower the velocity. Okay, let's make this one a little bit more often. So let's go. And I think because this one's happening the most, I want it to be the quietest. And then I think what I also want to do is put some like different effects on some of these drums so that they're in different spaces. Because right now, literally everything, drum-wise, everything is up front in your face. So it all just sounds like it's all up in your face. And so what I'm going to do is put like reverb, delay, chorus, maybe some other things on some of these different sounds to push them back so that not everything's sitting in the same space. I'm also doing something similar when I'm putting some in mono versus separated. So I noticed I have a lot of really bright sounds that are in this high range, like I'm talking 5K and above, and it feels like I have way too many of them. So I'm taking some of these higher frequencies out of some of these hat sounds. Yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of this one. This hi-hat pattern, which is this one. And then I use Maximus on the melodies. Sometimes I do some compression, but usually it's just to put things in mono versus separated. So I take my low frequencies, which in this case is 266 and below. Those are being separated. And the high frequencies, which in this case are almost 6,000 and above, are being separated. Or I'm sorry, are being merged. And the reason why I do that is because that's the opposite of what I tend to do with like the drums. I tend to put the like lower frequencies in mono and higher frequencies tend to be separated, aside from like maybe the main hi-hat or something like that. But generally speaking, that's the case. So I tend to do the opposite with the melodies, so that they're not competing for the same space with the same frequencies. And for a similar reason, I tend to take, this is a mid-side EQ, by the way, so I'm on the mids. I tend to take more lows out of the mids than I do the sides. And the reason is to get the low frequencies out of the way of the bass, which is going to be sitting in the mid in the mono space mostly. So, I think for a similar reason to what I said earlier for the hi-hats, I think I want to put some reverb on one of these main snare sounds, because I have 3 different sounds that are, so I'm going to pick one of these 2 that are consistently playing, because this middle one's the one that doesn't play half the time. So I think because the volume of this one stays pretty similar throughout, I'm going to add reverb to this one. So I'm going to add a lot of reverb, and then I'm going to mix it out. So let's do some delay as well. So tons of reverb, and I just want to take off like 1% of the dry signal, and that's going to become even less when I mix it out later. So, and let's turn this up, and then, so that's too much. That might be just the right amount. And if you wanted to, you could not take off any dry signal. I just did that because there are 3 different sounds being layered for this. So taking off a little bit of the dry signal is probably not going to be noticeable, especially 1%. But if you're concerned about changing the impact of the sound, just don't lower the dry signal at all. Just leave it as is. And there are more things I could add to this. More processing I could do. I could add an 808 if I wanted to, or like maybe a bass guitar or something. And also when I go to like finish the beat, I will arrange everything, take things out at certain places, but for the most part, this is like the meat and potatoes of what you're going to hear for this beat. So let's listen back.